let's do it then. Newcastle United at Anfield. Let's touch on the form to begin with, Scott. Bounced back
Yeah,
from somewhat of a surprise battering at the hands of Man City over the weekend. Hard fought 4-3 victory in the end. It didn't look like it for a while, but it was eventually. And
yeah.
if you go a little bit further back, really, it looks like Newcastle are often getting on the right side of these results, but there's goals at both ends. They feel a little bit more open than maybe they'd like. I can't quite put my finger on it.
Yeah, I mean, that game has summed up Newcastle's season, really, in that when they've been good this season, they've been very good. You know, they've beaten Arsenal home and away in the Cup. They've won at Spurs, which they hadn't done for years. They won at Old Trafford, all right. Man United aren't what they were, but still, Newcastle just don't win at Old Trafford. So for them to win there was a massive deal. They've had some standout results and some very good performances, but when they've been bad, the wheels have come off. 4-1 defeat at home to Bournemouth. Lost at home to Fulham, lost at home to West Ham, lost at home to Brighton. You know, it's been a very inconsistent season. And I think that's probably frustrating Howe more than anything else, because Howe is very much a kind of methodical manager, you know, very detailed, likes to know what he's going to get. And that hasn't really been the case this season. From game to game, it's been hard to second guess Newcastle. And then as you saw at the weekend, even within games, sometimes it's been hard to second guess them. So I think more than maybe some previous Newcastle teams, I think the ceiling of this team is probably higher, but the floor at the minute is probably lower, and you don't quite know what you're going to get.
No, that's certainly how it looks, isn't it? As I watched that game of the weekend, because obviously it was prior to our kick-off against Man City, and first half, absolutely electric, unstoppable. Alexander Isak looked unplayable, he so often does. And then second half, it was all Forest, and maybe Newcastle was somewhat fortunate to get away with the 3 points in the end.
Yeah,
In terms of the injury front then, Joe Linton's a big miss, isn't he? I think he's still going to be out for
yeah,
this one. And there's doubt over Sven
yeah,
Botman as well.
yeah. Yeah, they're the two. I mean, Botman's there or thereabouts, but I doubt he'll throw him in. Yeah, I mean, Botman had a cruciate injury and then came back. And while it's not a recurrence of the cruciate, it is just pain in that kind of area. So they're going to want to be careful with him. I mean, you know, I'm sure we're going to touch on the cup final. That is obviously looming a little bit further down the road. So I don't think they'll risk Botman. Joe Linton's not ready. Tonali's the one. He started on the bench at the weekend. He'd had a bit of a hamstring issue earlier in the week, but was deemed to be fit enough to be on the bench. Came on for the last 20 minutes when Newcastle were desperately trying to wrest a bit of control back. As long as he's right, I think he'll start at Anfield, because I think Howe will want his kind of control of the game in there, his level head, all that kind of stuff. So if he comes in, it'll be one of Miley or Willock that drops out. Miley's played really well the last game and a half when he's come back in. Obviously got the goal. He was the only player in the defeat of Man City that looked anything like. I think he might well get the nod ahead of Willock. So it might be Miley, Tonali and Bruno as the midfield three. I suspect that'll be the only change. The front three will be unchanged as long as they're right. And I don't think he'll change the back four. Trippier and Livramento have been swapping around a little bit, but I think he'll want Livramento's legs against Liverpool. So I suspect the back four will be what it was against Forest at the weekend.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I'm a big Lewis Miley fan, actually, for what it's worth as well. I think it's a technically very good footballer and very young still as well, of course. But that midfield department,
Yeah.
you know, prior to Joe Linton's injury, was really sort of the fulcrum of the side, really. Like, which you want your midfield to be, of course, but that was a real sort of strong point for Newcastle. And I think it remains not too weakened by Miley's inclusion, especially if Tonali is back, as you mentioned. I'm also a big Lewis Hall fan, for what it's worth, while we're on the topic. In terms of key players, Scott, it's too simplistic just to say Alexander Isak, but it kind of is Alexander Isak. I mean, you mentioned Bruno there. I think Anthony Gordon comes into this conversation as well. You know, if Newcastle are going to beat Liverpool, if Newcastle are going to win the Carabao Cup, if they're going to finish in the top 4/5, who is the one? Is it just Alexander Isak?
Isak's, as you say, the kind of obvious one, because he is Newcastle's world-class talent. You know, he's debates about where he's at in the pecking order in the Premier League strikers, but he is the one at Newcastle that you look at and think, my God, they're going to do well to hold on to him in the long term. You know, they're going to have to get in the Champions League. They're going to have to throw a load of money at him for a contract, all of this. He is that good. So, I think he can cause trouble to the Liverpool defence. Yeah, absolutely. Now, can they get the ball to him? can Newcastle stay in the rest of the game? I mean, funny enough, I think Newcastle's key player is the one you mentioned right at the start there, which is going to be Lewis Hall. Because the reality is, I mean, watching Liverpool from afar, how on earth do you remotely stop Mo Salah? And in the home game at St James's, I actually thought for an hour Lewis Hall did really, really well against Salah. When Newcastle were on top, Salah was actually pretty quiet for about an hour of that game. And then within 10 minutes, he just exploded into life, tortured Hall down the left-hand side. If you remember, Alexander-Arnold came off the bench, didn't he, in that game? He started on the bench. He came on, and within 10 minutes, his link-up play with Salah had nearly put Newcastle out the game. It had turned the game around. So I'm like you. I mean, I like Hall. He's been great for Newcastle. He's better going forward than as a pure defender. Can he defend against Mo Salah? Yes, he'll probably get down the wing and help and look lively, but can he defend against Mo Salah? I think to at least some extent, I think the game's there, because if you know, as we've seen, and as I'm sure Liverpool fans don't need telling, if Mo Salah's on song, he just could win the game by himself.
Yeah, it's so often a key battle, Mo Salah against whoever he's coming up against in the full-back areas. It really is. And likewise, on the other side, a little bit, we often come up against teams that look to get one-on-one with Trent. We've seen it a little bit from Man City and Docker at the weekend, of course. So, yeah, that can often be sort of the path to least resistance, rather, I should say, when it comes to scoring goals. I mean, Van Dijk against Isak, another one we can pinpoint and single out. There's lots and lots of intriguing battles here. And all of them, Scott, are a precursor, are that dress rehearsal for the Carabao Cup final. So just how much stock do you put in that for this one? I mean, I think both teams would like to win the game just to win the game. But in terms of, you mentioned it earlier on, it's on the horizon. It's literally like 2 and a bit weeks away. Funnily enough, today is a year ago today that Liverpool lifted it last time. So we're in Carabao Cup final territory now. Like, how important is this game for what happens next?
I think, looking at it from partly from the outside and partly from a Newcastle head on, I think it's probably more important for Newcastle in that respect, because Liverpool are Liverpool, aren't they? They're going for everything. They've got the Champions League. They want to win the league title. I mean, yes, the Carabao Cup will clearly be important to them, but if Liverpool lose to Newcastle on Wednesday night, I don't think that'll affect their thinking going into the Carabao Cup final one little bit. Newcastle, if they go and get beat 3-0, 4-0, 5-0 at Anfield 2 weeks before they play Liverpool in the final, I don't see how that cannot affect them, given all the stuff that goes around a cup final with Newcastle, and we all know how badly they performed at Wembley, and we all know how long the wait's been and all of that stuff. So if you then are throwing in as well, where they've just been to Liverpool 3 weeks ago and Mo Salah's absolutely tortured them, Szoboszlai's ran the midfield, Jota's got a hat-trick, whatever, then I think that would be part of the narrative for Newcastle, in the way that, like I say, yes, listen, if Alexander Isak absolutely tortures Van Dijk, then it will be a factor, won't it? But I don't think that if Liverpool lose that game, it'll be part of the narrative of the build-up in the way that it will be if Newcastle go and have a really bad night at Anfield.
No, that's absolutely spot on. So I think that's bang on. And it's not just because this is going to sound sort of really disrespectful. It's definitely not meant to be. But a lot of this Liverpool squad, literally last season, are seasoned winners. They've been there, done it. So they know how to deal with the setbacks and to respond, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And as you mentioned, there's still Premier League glory on the table. There's still potential Champions League glory as well. So yeah, there's a bigger picture at play here. But for Newcastle, admittedly, top 4 remains a thing and what have you. But this Carabao Cup final's got so much expectancy and so much weight on it from a fan's point of view as well. Yet it feels as though this game will have a detrimental effect should it go the way of Liverpool on the Newcastle squad. Last couple of questions now, mate. In terms of the approach, in terms of the tactics, Eddie Howe, what do you make of it? What do you think he's going to do? How's he going to approach this one? Because it's quite aggressive, I think it's fair to say, by and large. Do you think it will remain that way?
I think he will, yeah. I mean, once in an absolute blue moon, he goes 5 at the back. He did it for the second leg of the Arsenal semi-final, but that was very much a kind of one-off situation where you've got a 2-0 lead to defend, and it's a different scenario. I don't think he'll play his normal formation, 4-3-3. He'll look to get on the front. I mean, I think Newcastle are at the point of their evolution now where they have to have the mindset that we need to take these teams on as equals. I know a lot of people will say they're not yet, and that's fine. But I think they've got to go in with that mindset because, you know, if they want to keep on building and get to where they get to and keep hold of your Isaacs and your Brunos and your Anthony Gordons and all of these type of players, then you can't be going to a team like Liverpool and shutting up shop and trying to nick a 1-0. You know, you've got to go and try and play your game. And if you're not good enough, you're not good enough.
No, I absolutely agree with you 100%. Yeah, because as you say, that's the destination for Newcastle. They want to be in that conversation regularly, season in, season out. And there's no good, especially with the players you've got at your disposal and what you're trying to achieve in this literal campaign. There's no good coming somewhere like Anfield and saying we're inferior and just surrendering possession.
Well, there's the argument as well that the defence is the worst part of Newcastle's team. So actually, your best bet is probably to get on the front foot and try and ask Liverpool questions, because the reality is, unless something really bizarre happens, I don't see Newcastle keeping a clean sheet. So they're going to have to score goals to take anything from this game. So, you know, I think that'll be in their thinking.
Yeah, it definitely should be in the psyche. Yeah, and on the slot this morning, we were sort of singing the praises of Isak, of course, and a little bit of Anthony Gordon as well. So yeah, definitely the attack is where the threat lies, which is so often the case. Dead finally, then prediction. How's it going to go?
3-1 Liverpool.
After all that,
I should be more optimistic, shouldn't I? But listen, I've seen Newcastle have some horrendous nights at Anfield. I don't think it'll be that. I don't think it'll be hammered out of sight. The Man City game was a complete no-show from Newcastle. They just did not turn up and they got spanked. And I think that how we'll be throwing that at them. Look, you know, whatever happens, we do not have a repeat of that, because that was just unacceptable. So I think Newcastle will be better than that. But yeah, 3-1. Salah's bound to score.
No, I mean, listen, when he plays footy these days, he's bound to score more or less. It doesn't really matter who he's come up against. But yeah, I think that scoreline, listen, I'll take it, of course, we'll 3 more points, but it's not, for what we talked about earlier on, it's not that damaging psychologically to Newcastle either, I don't think. Whereas a 4-5, as you mentioned, if you drum up something that.
I think Newcastle have to get out having felt like they've done enough to suggest that on another day they can really have a go at Liverpool. You know what I mean? Listen, if Newcastle can take anything from the game points-wise, it will be absolutely brilliant for them. But like you say, I think they just have to show that even if just for 10-minute chunks, 15-minute chunks, they can go toe-to-toe with Liverpool. They did it in the home game, to be fair to them.
Oh, yeah, absolutely they did. Yeah, well, that was one of our most difficult examinations this season, I think it's fair to say. Obviously, everyone will point to the Nottingham Forest defeat at home, because obviously, but yeah, that game up at St James's was properly testing. It was. Yeah, Scott, top man, thanks so much for your time. Let people know where they can find your work. Obviously, Ben Doak, Jayden Dan's, Carabao Cup final, all that stuff.
Yeah, on the Northern Echo website, so www.northernecho.co.uk. Yeah, if you want to see how Dan's and Doak are doing once they're back in the team, give us a follow. Also on X or Twitter or whatever the hell you want to call it, Blue Sky, all of that. Scott Wilson Echo.
Top man, thanks again for your time. Everybody else, thanks for watching, thanks for listening. Take it easy. See you soon.